police are being cut, security services are full to the brim. And I'll tell you, as somebody who's been working in this area all my adult life, and since Theresa May became Prime Minister, from her premiership onwards till this day, the government has completely taken their eye off the ball on what we call counter-radicalisation. The only thing you can do with those who have served their sentences, if you believe in a country that implements the rule of law, you have to release them from jail. The only thing you can do is then ongoing deradicalisation efforts with them, and sometimes they don't work, as is evidenced yesterday. And the second thing, which is more important because deradicalisation, as evidenced by yesterday, is extremely inefficient. The second thing is the most important one, which is preventing them becoming radicalised in the first place. That one, you might call it soft power. I call it counter-radicalisation. That is what will save lives. Now, it's easy to understand when we have campaigns that say things like just say no to drugs. It's easy to understand when we have campaigns over knife crime. But on this area of counter-radicalisation, it is my considered opinion that from Theresa May's premiership onwards all the way through to Boris Johnson today, the Home Office and the government have completely taken their eye off the ball. They've stopped engaging with the voices that address these issues. They mistrust pretty much everybody that talks about it. They've closed in on themselves, and led by Theresa May during her time as a Secretary of State for Home Affairs at the Home Office, all the way through to her premiership, and then that legacy has continued. They've had an obsessive focus with a law and order approach because they simply don't understand the importance of making sure people don't become radicalised in the first place. How do you do that? Well, we're going to spend the next 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 45 minutes talking about that. Feel free to ask me questions about it, but I have lost my patience with the inaction and the disengagement by the government on these issues. Because I feel like the definition of insanity is to say the same thing over and over again and not learn from those mistakes. We've all been here before. I've been doing this for 10 years, 12 years roughly. We set Quilliam up, for example, as a counter-extremism organisation in 2008. Some of us feel like this is all déjà vu. Because they are simply not listening to what needs to be done. Now, whether it's because of austerity, they're saying now that's kind of going to come to an end, whether it's because there's resistance within Muslim communities to the counter-radicalisation efforts, otherwise known as PREVENT. But it's time to take a stand because, by the way, if you reject PREVENT and counter-radicalisation work, then the alternative is throw them in jail and lock them up and throw away the key. That would be the alternative. For those voices coming from within Muslim communities who say, we don't want PREVENT, not only does that mean you don't want the far right to be addressed, because they're also getting radicalised, and guess what? PREVENT does that too, but you're also basically saying you want a police state, because it's PREVENT's job to work with communities on the ideological side of this to prevent radicalisation. If you don't want that part, then all you're saying is arrest and convict. You want a police-led response to this, which is a law and order response to this, which is precisely what Theresa May did at the Home Office onwards. Then what you end up with is security cameras spying on communities like that scandal in Birmingham. If you don't want the softer side of this, and I'm addressing directly now Muslim communities, if you're not prepared to engage with counter-radicalisation, then deal with the consequences. And that is your civil liberties are taken away. We've already lost the right to silence in airports and ports of entry and exit in this country, where it's a criminal offence now not to answer questions. With or without a lawyer. If you can get a lawyer there in time, good luck. We've got some of the most dense security camera presences in our cities in the world. And so if you reject this notion that counter-radicalisation and working to challenge this ideology in the communities is the way forward, then deal, as I say, with the consequences, because the only alternative you then leave people is a law and order police-led state. But that counter-radicalisation works for the far right, the far left, as well as the Islamist extremes. And the idea is to prevent people who become disengaged and dislocated from society treading down that path in the first place. Very soon we're going to have a whole bunch of convicted terrorists released from jail. And there's nothing we can do about it, because they would have served their full sentence. And as I say, there are people that have come back from Syria. What do you want to do with these people? They will be walking around on our streets, and any day one of them could snap like happened yesterday. We must start thinking seriously about the long-term social cohesion efforts that are needed to get people, whether we like it or not, to rehabilitate them into society and to debunk these ideologies that they subscribe to.